Kinetic Sports. My name is Brian, and today we are discussing another topic from the local scene. And of course, we look at the stories that make the headlines around East Africa and Africa in general. Today, of course, I'm going to be discussing something to do with. There's a certain gentleman. I was watching one of the socials and I saw a gentleman coming out and putting up a story in his video. He highlighted how DSTV, one of the major pay TV companies, is really affecting the game here. And of course, he gave his reasons. And one of the few things that he talked about is that the game in Africa is dying. And he gave a few examples of why he thinks that the game is dying, especially because of this pay TV. And today, of course, I thought it would be necessary for me to share with you why we are seeing a decline in the game. Is there a decline, as we call it, or we have challenges that faced by all the other footballing nations around the world? So I'll be discussing that, and of course, giving my opinion on what we should do in order to see that, and what is exactly the problem when we look at that. And of course, there are a lot of things that we can look at, and I managed to get a few points that really were highlighted in his discussion. One of them being that it is overshadowing the local leagues here in Uganda, Kenya, as well as Tanzania, whereby it broadcasts the English Premier League and the UEFA Champions League and other elite competitions, which have a higher quality production. And that high quality production, of course, means that the marketing is good. So the results are the fans overwhelmingly are going to be preferring the Premier League as well as the Liga as compared to the local leagues. And of course, this includes the match day attendances will be affected in the local leagues, because if you have a premiership game and you have Uganda's Premier League game, you will not have the same kind of people going for the same numbers going for those type of games. And of course, he also highlighted some of the other things I looked at as well, the issues that might be affected, especially with having two competitive leagues. The TV viewership for the local leagues also is on a decline because people prefer watching the games. Even the time zones that are awarded for these local leagues is not the same. Prime time is given to these big leagues because they give the kind of like when you look at the value for the money, they offer value for the money that is injected in there. Then there's also sponsorship interest. There's a limited sponsorship interest in the domestic leagues because most people really want to put their money where it's worth. So the English Premier League is one of the major leagues around the world, not only here in Uganda or Tanzania or Kenya, but around the world. So a lot of sponsors want to look for those slots where we have the Premier League, and that's where they are putting their money. So that means that the local leagues will not really have that kind of financing, according to my small analysis. The other thing is also, of course, I talked about diverting the sponsorship and as well as advertising. I told you local clubs here struggle to attract sponsors in here because of different reasons. One of them, because of the setup of some of the clubs. Some clubs are not set up professionally, so these corporate companies will not see themselves, associating their brands with these local companies. Sometimes it's because of the market, transitions as well as the market trends. A lot of clubs here in Uganda do not understand these market trends, so that really affects their marketing strategies. It affects their them being attractive to these big companies, because these companies want to see companies that really will add value to them, and these values can be in form of their brands, can be in form of whatever is really passed on. And I really think that local companies here really are not doing exactly that. But it's all non-negative because we are looking at what is really killing the game. And this, to me, was a little bit of the negative bit of it. But on the positive bit, we are seeing exposure. We are having a lot of players being seen around the world because these local leagues are being broadcasted. We had, I think, a chance in 2013, 2015, when we had a sponsorship with DSTV, and we had players being seen in South Africa, the Masindo Nyangos of this world, and all the other players that really were playing on the local scene. We've also seen that even in Kenya, even in Nigeria, where we have these kind of sponsorships, not only for DSTV, but the likes of Star Times, the likes of other pay TVs. Though some of them, of course, have failed out, the likes of Kwesi TV have failed out, DTV failed out here in Uganda, but the small few that have really done it, we've seen at least something to do with the ability of the local league really to push all these people out there to really give them a chance to kind of like, have that kind of representation, even if it's not locally here, but we are able to see them, especially on these big legions. So that is one of the few things that really, to me, holds something positive when you compare the two. When you compare the international leagues as well as the local leagues in there. And of course, not only that, when it comes to diverting sponsorship and advertising, the culture shift as well, the culture of the game in England really is spreading here in East Africa. It's spreading all over Africa. The way we believe in the game, the way the fans, especially the young fans here in Uganda, are really now really picking up trends from the international scene. We are having people naming their kids names standing in from, the likes of Gerard, the likes of Torres, those big names from the European leagues, and also the culture, the way people perceive the game, the way now we've seen for the past 2 years, there's been this tradition of starting the ball from the back. It is a tradition and a culture that has been passed on even to the national teams. You don't see our teams now playing like the way we think. We play according to what international standards demand. If the trend is playing from the back, then we are picking up that culture. And I think that has really, in one way or another, affected the game, because we are not doing the games according to our ability. We are doing it according to what other people, the way they are doing it. And I think that has been a culture shift in there. So is one of the other things that has also kind of like affected the game, but also positively it has affected the game, because now we can now look at match day experiences for the local leaders as something that you can really boast about. We are seeing professionalism come back to the game, because we see it every single weekend. We see it in the Premier League, we see it in the La Liga, we see it in the Dutch LDVC. So we need to kind of like pick up the trends, and we are seeing our players being a little bit tidy, being smart, preparing for match days as if it is a big tournament. And for a weekend in the Premier League, the broadcast, the media, and all that comes up, especially in preparation to the game, is something that is done here in Uganda for a national team. So if we really pick up that trend and we see match days in there as something valuable, then I think we shall get to the next level in there. And of course, those are the few things that I can relate with when it comes to pay TV. The other issues that we have in our game are totally not to do with pay TVs. I've highlighted a few of them, and let's just go through them very fast, because I don't really want to rely on one thing and blame someone, yet some of the problems are our own making. I'll give you an example: the corruptness as well as the incompetent leadership that we have in our game has already been, something that we've put on ourselves. We've had mismanagement, the lack of transparency in the FK. F as well, that is in Kenya. We've seen the misuse of funds. We've seen in FUFA here, we've had issues whereby even the president of FUFA was banned for something like 2 months for illegal selling of World Cup tickets in there. We've also seen in Tanzania as well, the poor planning has been an issue, and there's been a lot of talk of poor planning in there. And of course, this has hindered the investment in the youth development as well as the infrastructure in there. There's also been lack of adequate infrastructure, whereby, of course, the training infrastructure, the match day infrastructure, the media infrastructure, everything to do with developing the game has affected the game. And in Uganda here, we lack proper training facilities. Of course, that has been worked on very slowly with the African Cup of Nations 2027 being prepared, and we are seeing renovations to stadiums like Nachebo stadiums. We're seeing Mandela National Stadium. We are seeing new stadiums being developed, and of course, we are also seeing in Kenya the Nyayo Stadium as well as the Kasarani Stadium being upgraded to the level of Africa there. Then, of course, in Tanzania, new infrastructure in Dar es Salaam is being constructed, as well as in Dodoma. And of course, this limits the training as well as hosting of big games if we don't have the kind of infrastructure. And of course, the professionalization of the league as well is affected because you do not have the kind of equipment as well as infrastructure to really support that. There is also insufficient funding as well as investment that has also affected the game. We don't see a lot of government putting money into our games. Of course, we've seen changes in the budgets starting, I think, this past 3 years. We've seen governments coming in and putting in more money, but I'm talking about the local leagues where we have private people investing into the game. We only see people like Mr. Lawrence Mugindo and Vipers coming in and putting in a lot of money, which really cannot be sustainable. Of course, teams like Simba FC also depend on wealthy individuals as well, but it's not sustainable. We need to see that the government puts in structures that provide the funds to these teams, as well as it might not be in form of 100% direct cash, but they have to put in place things that really give them an ability to invest in these teams. Weak grassroots as well as development of youth is something that has also affected our game. We don't have a lot of emphasis, especially on the structures that help the youth get to the level where we want them to get to. We have youth struggling to get to the top, and if at all, if we don't use structures like schools where we have a group of them all together and we invest in such structures, then we will not have the talent that we have. In fact, the biggest talent that we have here in Uganda goes through the inter-school competitions in there. And if at all it's not inter-school, it's very hard to get such players from academies, because academies here in Uganda are not something that you can say are strictly on the talent. They are strictly on the money. And that is where we have poor talent identification, and of course, which really, really affects our game in there. The player welfare as well as the low salaries is not something that DSTV is really putting in our game. We are the people that are doing it. We pay players the kind of money that is not their worth. Players are vacating the local leagues and going all the way to leagues in Vietnam, leagues in other countries like Ghana, just to get that money to support their families, because they need to survive as individuals. So if we're told we don't put in the money and we don't pay the good salaries, then we shall have an exodus of our players from our local leagues, which will kill the game and has killed the game to the level whereby the biggest talent now is going all the way in Europe, because that is where the money is. And of course, we all know that we over rely so much on the foreign leagues. Of course, in countries like Tanzania, we've seen that local clubs are being supported a little bit more better than here in Uganda. In Kenya, it's picking up very fast. In Uganda, here we still have a problem with the way we structure our clubs. Most of our clubs are institutional clubs like KCCA, like Villa. No, like KCCA, like Police FC, like prisons, like UPDF, and we all know that these institutions are really, sometimes when it comes to their relationship with people out there, sometimes it's not 100% up to the good level. We know that Kampala City Council, as a body that manages the city, has a lot of people that it steps on its toes. We have a lot of people having issues with the Uganda Revenue Authority. So supporting such clubs, supporting such institutions sometimes becomes a little bit harder when someone is biased, especially with their day-to-day alterations with this kind of the situation. So we need to really go back to the structures whereby clubs come from regions where people can feel a little bit affiliated to these clubs from the word go, whereby we have kids growing up and understanding that this is where I grow from, this is where I come from. And I think Masaiza Cup has really done it here in Uganda. It is something that really people support 100%, because they know even if I go overseas for 100 years, I'll still remain someone who originated from this kind of regional area. We've also had political issues. We've also had limited international exposure, whereby, of course, we have limitations on if we want our players to go and get that kind of experience from these international leagues to bring them back. We are limited to that, because now for you to sign for a club in Europe, I think you need to be in the first 70 places in the FIFA rankings, if I'm not mistaken. And that really, really, really affects their gaming of work permits and all that stuff. It has also affected our game. So that really cannot be related to the pay TVs as well. So I really entirely think that there are a lot of issues that are beyond just the pay TVs. I don't entirely think that these pay TVs are really entirely responsible for our problems. They've really had bigger share of their problems as well, whereby we have a lot of big subscriptions for us to watch these games. From things like DSTV, people are really crying foul with non innovations. Of course, the lack of they feel that the support that these companies, especially put into the local game is not enough, giving them match days, the match hours, and all that stuff. Really, it's not enough. But they've done their duty. They've done at least what I would expect them to do, because now this is also a business. We should also understand that these people put up a business that they need really to support, and put in the money. They have budgets that they run on a daily basis, so they cannot do entirely something that is charitable. They can really do something to an extent, and then we need to have other parties come in and also involve themselves in the day-to-day running of football. So I would really give them, at least when you say out of 10, I would say they are 3% responsible for our problems, and then the 7% is entirely our own making, the poor leadership, the selfishness that comes into the management of the game, the individual, preferences as we usually have for other leagues, and then the government itself not coming out and supporting such local leagues by putting in measures that limit the amount of exposure that we get from international level. Maybe the government cannot do it through forms of money or anything like that, but they need to really pick themselves up and put up strategies that really promote the game. But we cannot say it's all doomed for the game here in Africa. We are seeing positives already, whereby we have Uganda qualifying for the under-17 World Cup already. We have developments in there. We are seeing Tanzania as well, its clubs going all the way on the African level and performing to their best. We are seeing infrastructure development in Kenya, whereby we are seeing a better infrastructure, better stadia, a 60,000 capacity stadium that is strictly for football and rugby is being constructed. One of the best that we shall see here in Africa as well as East Africa. So there are a little bit of things that we can really be proud of and say these are the things that we really need to see. In our game here in Africa as well as East Africa. And we really believe that with the small issues that are coming up, with small amendments that we can do in our game, I think we are almost there. We'll get there. Maybe by the time we get there, it might not be the yardstick to measure our progress, because we might say that in 10 years we will be at the level of the Premier League, but in 10 years the Premier League will be elsewhere. So we cannot say that we'll get to where they are, but at least we can see developments, and we can only do that if we do it as a joint effort. So that is why we come back with these programs, trying to tell you about our game, trying to appreciate our game. And I really want to thank you so much for all that have been part of this. Let's support the game. Let's go back and support our local leaders, because that is where the development of the game comes from. That is where we give the money. That is where we can really support it from. So that is what I really wanted to share with you today. And of course, thank you so much for being part of that. We shall be coming back with another video. Enjoy your day. Stay safe. Bye-bye.